The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this show belong solely to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate and not that of Keller Williams TCI or any of its affiliates. Any action you take upon the information provided on this show is strictly at your own risk, and Let's Talk TCI Real Estate guest or host will not be liable for any losses and damages in connection with the use of the material. I am not an investment advisor, broker, or dealer. Welcome to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate. It is raining outside today, but it is still a very good day. And I'm looking forward to talking to you today on the show. So as usual, I always will ask you, please like and share this page with anyone that you know would be interested in listening about and talking about real estate today. For those who are listening for the first time, I will say welcome to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate. And for my followers who are with me all the time, welcome back to another episode. I would also like to say thanks to Mr. Drexel Seymour, who was my guest on the last show. Thank him so much for information he shared about empowerment through land ownership. I did receive a lot of feedback from that show, a lot of valuable information from persons on island. And just for the sake of those who did not have the opportunity to watch the show, I invite you to just do a recap and look on my page, Real Estate with Vernica Delancey, for the show, or you can check out my YouTube channel, which is Vernica Delancey, for a replay of that show as well as all the other shows that I have done with Let's Talk TCI Real Estate. So with that said, I would like to say that today's show, I do not have a guest panelist. What I will be doing is a recap based on the previous shows that I have done. But at the same time, I will leave opportunity for you if you have a real estate question that you would like to ask me as a real estate agent. I am open to answering those questions. So as you watch the live feed, please feel free to ask a question that you may have, and I'll try my best to answer those questions for you. So any questions you have in relation to real estate that you would like to ask me as a realtor, I am here and open to answering those questions and discussing it with you. In the meantime, there are a few very important information that I have gathered from the previous shows that I think is very important, just to reiterate one more time. And I would like to dedicate this show to talking about some of those items or some of those issues. But like I said, if you have a question in between, please feel free to just drop it in the live feed, and I will stop and I'll answer those questions for you. So on the first episode of Let's Talk TCI Real Estate, we spoke about mortgage pre-qualification, and we did have the team from RBC on. They were two mortgage specialists, and they did clarify a lot of misinformation about the banks. And some of the points that I did take from that show that I think is worth talking about again, they are as follows. So one of the first things they did acknowledge that they do have a pre-qualification process, and you can be pre-qualified. This is very important because as real estate agents, we often tell our customers to go and get pre-qualified by the bank. So you can be pre-qualified. So you would be able to know in advance what you can afford, so that when you begin your real estate search, then you know exactly where to start looking. So some of the documents that they have pointed out that you would need when getting to be pre-qualified is a job letter, a pay slip, and your deposit activity. Because I talk about deposit activity, one of the things that did come to mind even during the show at that time is where, sometimes even as, small businesses, or even if we have like a rental apartment or such, sometimes we tend to allow our tenants to pay us in cash, and we don't directly deposit those cash to the bank. It is always good to, a good practice to have that money deposited to the bank so that it shows you, give you a history, so that in future, if you want to take on a mortgage, then the bank does have a history that you can follow. And I say that because one of the things they did ask about was your deposit activity. So the mortgage process, when working with the bank, there is a mortgage checklist that your bank can provide you with, of all the things that you will need to provide them with. One of the items included in this checklist is a preliminary agreement. And this preliminary agreement is provided by the real estate agents. So once you have already selected that property and you have decided to make an offer, that real estate agent that you have decided to work with, they will provide you with a preliminary agreement that you can then send to the bank. So once all the information is received and all of the documents that you have been asked to give on the checklist, then those information will then be sent out for approval by the bank. After approval is received, you will then receive an offer letter from the bank. And then the bank will send all of that information to the attorneys so that they can draft the charge documents. After which, this information is then sent to land registry for registration. So there is a process. And during the show, an exact turnaround time was not given, but an approximate turnaround time was around 6 to 7 weeks for a straightforward process. Okay, but every turnaround time will differ depending on the loan application, and as well as if you as a customer provide the information up front that the bank is requesting of you. And that's one very important thing to talk about, because sometimes, like they had mentioned before, you have a checklist of what you need to provide. And instead of, just as an example, they ask you for 3 consecutive pay slips and you only come with 2 pay slips and not the third one, all of these small little items will slow down the process. So that's why they cannot give an exact turnaround time. So whenever any information is asked of you by the bank, what you need to do is to try to stick directly with the checklist, give the exact information, and if any information you cannot provide, then make sure that you convey that to your loan officer so that they can help you in maneuvering around what you need to do in order to get the right information to them so that they can begin processing the loan. Okay? Another important thing that we gathered from that conversation with RBC Bank was the deposits for non-residents versus residents. For residents, the normal deposit is 20%. And also you have to consider there's also a 3.5% fee, which is 1% for your legal fee, 1.5% for the bank application fee, and 1% for stamp duty. If you are a non-resident, then you will have to provide an injection of about 35%. And of course, this information was gathered from RBC Bank, but it's just a guideline for you. If you are using one of the other banks, then you would want to ensure with them that their rates are the same. But this is good information so you could know how much you need to start saving towards in the event that you want to get a mortgage. And if you are seeking for a mortgage over $1 million, then the deposit is more of 50% instead of 35%. Okay? Also, another important thing to know about having a mortgage is that if you are non-resident, you do not have to be on island. In this case, of course, I'll say again with RBC Bank, because I'm not sure of the policy when it comes to First Caribbean or Scotia Bank, but speaking based on information that was provided by RBC Bank. You do not have to be on island. The transaction can be done online, and any original documents can be couriered via FedEx or DHL. All of this is to make the process more simpler. Even in terms of closing, you do not have to be online for the closing. That's very good information because sometimes if you're off island, you don't have to worry about trying to schedule a flight, just trying to be here and make it in time for the closing. All right. If you do not have the deposit, there is a possibility of using another property as collateral. And in this case, where an equity takeout is done, you have to know that both properties would be held by the bank in this circumstance. All right. Another important point that was talked about in the episode was about partnering to buy land. As a real estate agent, that's a question we normally get, from persons who want to purchase a property with someone else. Now, they also stated that the norm is usually when you have a partner, like a husband and wife, then yes, they will allow you to partner and buy land together. But that doesn't say that they would not do it under other circumstances, but that it has to be looked at based on your situation. Okay? But normally you have to be a husband and a wife. So you can't come with 10 friends. Okay? If you come with 10 friends and the bank allows something like that, or let me just say you can't come with 2 friends. But if you come with 2 friends, each person has to stand on their own to be able to borrow for the mortgage. You have to be able to qualify on your own merit to qualify for the mortgage. You can't be depending on the income from both of you to qualify. You have to be able to qualify on your own if the bank allows you to take a mortgage out with someone else who's other than a spouse. Okay? And the last thing I wanted to point out about what was discussed with RBC, because a lot of us are interested in, income properties. They did say that anybody who want to buy an income property, the rental income can help you come towards qualifying. However, you have to know that if the income is based on a short-term rental opportunity, you would have to provide them with at least 3 years of records. And if the income is based on a long-term rental opportunity, you have to be able to provide at least 6 months of records, but also you will have to provide lease agreements. So this is a point we want to stick at here. If you are currently an owner of an income property, an apartment building, if you do not have leases for your tenants, it's a good time to implement a lease for your tenant, okay? Because this is beneficial in the long run, okay? And the other thing about that is the income will have to be based on actual income and not projected income. So if your apartment is vacant, like if you had just built a new apartment and you want a mortgage or a loan, or if you're buying an apartment and the apartments have been vacant for a long time, or it's a new apartment, it may be more difficult to qualify. Allowing the income to be a part of your qualification, because the bank will be looking for that steady income record that has been generated. So it's calculated on actual income and not just on projected income. All right. In another episode of Let's Talk TCI Real Estate, we did have Mr. Mara Hall on, who spoke about property valuations. And she took her time in emphasizing the importance of having an appraisal done. Okay? The appraisal establishes the price of the property based on market value. And this appraisal is also to ensure that buyers do not overpay and sellers can list at a price that their properties can sell and not sit on the market for a long period of time. And one of the things I also want to point out about this episode is where she spoke about the different types of approaches. The different approaches that an appraiser would use. And one of them she spoke about was the comparative analysis approach. This is where a comparison is done based on recently sold data compared to the subject property. I point this out because as real estate agents, if someone contact us about listing their property for sale, this is also the type of approach that we take. We do a comparative market analysis to determine what we think is a fair market value for your property. So if you do not feel comfortable, just say with a realtor, if you go to an appraiser, they will also use the same approach. So it's the same approach to get to the price of your property. Now they also use income capitalization approach. This is done for properties that are done for investment purposes, right? Where the rent income is capitalized into market value. And they will do a cost analysis approach, which deals with the cost aspects of constructing the building, right? And this approach is usually used for property that does not regularly exchange hand, like a church, a school, or for insurance purposes. But generally, real estate wise, most likely the approach that's going to be taken for your property is the comparative marketed CMA, which is the comparable market analysis approach. So that basically explains how, as realtors or how appraisers come to determine the value of your property. So we're actually going to be going based on properties that have sold in your area and on the market that we can compare to let you know, hey, this year land in Long Bay sold for XYZ, and this is why we think your property is well valued at XYZ, right? The other thing I want to touch about is some of the things that as an appraiser they see could increase the value of your home, right? Sometimes we get our properties appraised and we are not satisfied with, what the value comes on at. So it was always good to know what are some of the simple things that you can do to increase value to your home. So some of the suggestions were upgrades to the home, or upgrades such as, your kitchen, give the kitchen an upgrade if it looks tired. Just basic painting of the outside of the home, adding a boundary wall or fence to your home. Yes, that adds value to it. Putting up some hedging, improving your parking areas. So instead you could have like a paved parking or designated parking spots, a carport or a garage, and even something as common as just a porch area, right? These are some things you can do to add value to your home. And if you're living on the canal, one of the obvious things is that you can provide put a dock on your property. This also provides value. So simple little things you can do. So you buy a house, don't just let it run down and leave it as that. Think about small little improvements that you can do around that you can use to improve the value of your home. Again, if you have any questions, send it in. I'm here to answer any real estate questions that you may have. It may not be based on what we're talking about, but I'm still here to answer those questions. And then we spoke also in another episode about the role of an attorney. And doing real estate, again, I keep going back to that because it is a real estate show and I know what people are always asking. Sometimes you do a transaction when you reach to the process, when you reach to the part where, hey, now you say to them, do you have an attorney you want to use? Sometimes the response is, I don't need an attorney. And most times that response comes because, persons are looking at their costs, which I do understand. So they don't have that added funds to hire an attorney. But so in the episode, I did ask the attorney if it's mandatory, if it's not mandatory, so that you can get a clear-cut answer as to what you can and cannot do. And so the response was that the law does not spell out that it is mandatory to hire an attorney for the closing of any transaction. However, it is good to know that even in the simplest of a transaction, there may be documents which include a number of things that you may need advice on, which is the truth. I have found that For persons who have selected not to use an attorney, when the purchase and sales agreement is given to them by, just say, if you are a purchaser, by the vendor's attorney to review, there are a lot of complicated jargons that they may not understand. And most times as real estate agents, we will try to assist as best as we can. But remember, we are not legal agents. So it is best if you do hire an attorney who can guide you through this complete process, right? So you may be concerned about the cost of hiring an attorney, but you must think about the cost that you may incur if something goes wrong in the process. Something can go wrong in the process, as straightforward as it may seem to be. Just say, for example, if there is an encroachment and you didn't pay close attention to the boundary certificate that was issued, now you close on the transaction because you're doing it by yourself, and then when you now try to occupy the property, you realize this issue that came up. If you did have an attorney, you would have noticed, simple things like that in advance. So while you thought you were cutting costs, now at a later date, it's like it created even greater cost for you. So that's one of the other benefits of having an attorney, right? The attorney can spell out your rights in the transaction. And like I said, one word in a legal document could have so much implications. And you can be confident that your interest is being represented if you decide to use an attorney. So basically, summing it up, it's, in my opinion, and based on the conversation that we had with the attorney on the show, it is more beneficial, even though it's not mandatory, it is more beneficial that you have an attorney representing you for a closing transaction. And I will also say this, whichever real estate agent that you are using, you can speak with them and they can guide you and give you suggestions as to attorneys that you can use. There are so many of them out there that you can use, and at an affordable cost that will get the transaction done, as well as have your interest represented at the end of the day and at the end of the closing, right? And the other thing I want to point out about why you should use an attorney as well, as it comes to mind based on real estate transactions, is that the attorney will guide you through the complete process, and the attorney also at closing will be there to assist you with the registration at land registry, with paying in of the stamp duties that you would have to pay into the government treasury, and also, like I say, with registration. It is a simple process, but at the same time, it can become complicated. And why take the stress on if you can have a legal mind do it for you, who's accustomed to doing it, knows just how to do it, and get it out right for you the first time around, okay? So the role of the attorney is to guide you through the process by preparing all the legal documents and coordinating the entire closing, liaising with everyone who is involved, including the final registration with the land. And also the legal attorney will liaise even with the banks. If you are taking out a mortgage, they are there to liaise with the banks to make sure that complete process goes well, okay? So think about it when you're doing your next transaction, or if you are a first-time home buyer and you're not sure of the process and not sure if you want to hire an attorney or not. Just think about all of these things, all these benefits that will come if you decide to use an attorney instead of trying to do it yourself. Of course, if you are a brilliant mind, then go ahead and do it yourself. But I strongly recommend that you have an attorney assist you with your closing. And the last point I wanted to talk about in reference to the attorney, based on another question that is usually asked to us as real estate agents, if you're doing a transaction with a bank, you have to remember that even though the bank has charged you a 1% legal fee, right? That's not saying that's your attorney and your representation. You must also have your own attorney to represent you from the purchaser standpoint and to do the final registration on your behalf. Okay, so please bear that in mind. right? I want to jump over onto where we spoke about, where we talked with the architect who came onto the show. Um, one of the it was really good to know that as an architect, once he has already completed the drawings for you, that he doesn't, well, leave you behind. And when I say that, means they do provide project management services. So whichever architect you are working with, don't be shy and ask them, hey, do you provide a project management service? Why is this important? It is important because the architect ensures that the project is built to the specification of the approved plans. And again, why is this important? So that you can be sure that you are getting the product that you paid for and that you would like. Also, when it comes to now obtaining uh, um, occupancy permit through planning at the end of you building your home, planning is going to want to see your plans and to make sure that you have built based on the design. Okay, so to ensure that there is no hiccups, it will be good if you can have that architect make sure, verify everything as it goes along through the process. All right. So again, like I said, simple question, ask your architect, do you provide a project management service? It is an asset to you as an individual to have that service. It may cost you a bit more, but to have that service provided to you. All right. One of the things that they spoke about with architects that have made about cutting costs when you're doing drawings is that some architects, they may have a cookie cutter drawing that you can make use of. Now, most of the cookie cutter drawings, they may be for more simple homes, like in most cases, like a single family, first time home buyer, starter home, right? These may be the type of homes that may come in a cookie cutter form. But it is still good information to know if you don't have anything specific in plan. This is something that can help you to cut costs. A few other things that can help you in terms of cutting costs, if you do not decide to use a cookie cutter home, just think about a simple plan. Don't try to overcomplicate it, right? Think about using materials that may be medium in price range, but looks good, so it doesn't cost a lot, right? And then another important thing he talked about was try to have less rooms and more open space, right? We are so accustomed to the traditional homes where you have a home, a room for your front room, a room for your living room, a room for your dining room, and then 3 bedrooms. Hey, cut some of the rooms out, make it an open floor plan, except of course you want the rooms, the private rooms. Private rooms. So that's something you want to look into, when you're designing your home. Okay. And then one last point I want to make on this, and then I'm going to start answering a few questions that I see that are coming in. We are also in this time where a lot of people are still we do have a vibrant short-term rental market. And one of the things that the architect had also mentioned was what he sees as best practice for vacation rental home owners from a design standpoint, and to make their home more marketable was, again, number one was top on the list, an open concept. We spoke about that before, but it's also evident that in a lot of vacation rental homes, that's one of the big things that people are doing, open concept. High ceilings is a big thing, natural lighting, pools in the yard. Make sure position the house so that you can take advantage of the sunset. You would think that as a real estate agent, I've had that question so many times. Which direction does the sun set? So it is a very important factor for persons who are coming on island and renting, right? And outdoor, indoor living spaces, that's a very big thing. That's a very big thing when it comes to vacation rental homes. And also flat roofs so that people can sunbathe. That's really good. And positioning your home so that it can take advantage of the views that you have. Okay, so that's just a few things. I'll just list them off again. Flat roofs, take advantage of the views. Indoor living spaces, open concepts, high ceilings because it makes the place feel bigger. Natural lighting, have a pool in the yard, make sure position the house, to take advantages of the sunset. So these are some of the things you can think about if you are purchasing and thinking of building for vacation, short-term vacation rental purposes. All right. So just to answer one or two questions that came in, do you feel that prices will soon reduce due to the pandemic? Right? It is a good question, and we have been getting that question for a while. I will say this. Since we've recently done a market report for some of our customers in our office, and based on that information, it showed that since the pandemic have started, we have had a lot more buyers than normal, right? So it shows that persons are still buying out there. Because of this, and also I'll say this, I've had customers who have, vendors who have said to me, I am not reducing my price at this point in time because I was not directly affected by COVID-19. And unless I have a real reason to reduce, then I don't intend to do so right now. Now, there are persons who are reducing their prices. But what I've seen so far is that prices have not reduced. And actually prices are increasing still in value. A few things we have to think about when we talk about, when we think about the market in the Turks and Caicos. Number one, there is still limited supply when it comes to private land that is for sale. Number two, you do have a lot of persons who are second home buyers who have purchased and are now reselling, okay? So that's very important to know. Have I seen reduction in prices based on the properties I've had listed for sale? I did not see that many reduction in prices. Were there some reduction in prices? Yes, there were some reduction in prices, but not really at liberty to disclose why some of those properties were reduced in price, but it was not a direct relation to the COVID pandemic. All right. And one of the things, even in our interview with Mr. Drexel Seymour, he did also say, as an astute businessman, he did point out that prices are only increasing and not decreasing. Right? Another question I had that came in, well, I hope that answers your question. Another question that came in is to talk about what makes your property commercial versus residential. All right. So every property does have a zoning, and the planning department does have a development plan that has a zoning map where you can see the status of your property, whether it is residential or commercial. So they do have a plan mapped out on island to give consideration for whether it's a residential or commercial property. So you can find out the zoning of your property. And as an agent, they can assist you in helping you to find that out, what it is zoned for. But you have to consider that there are different types of residential property, different densities. So you would have low density, medium density, high density, and the different levels of densities will tell you how many kitchens, or they usually refer to as kitchens and not just units, that you can build on these property. And because you are talking about, asking about residential and commercial, I always like to point out, sometimes I have customers who come to me and they say, hey, I'm looking for a commercial building to build, a commercial property to build apartments. A commercial property, you don't need a commercial property to build apartments. You can build apartments on a residential property. It all depends on the zoning. So for example, you may have a high density zoning that allows 6 to 12 units or 24 units. And so you can build an apartment on something like that. Commercial is usually when you have like a business entity, like a storefront, um, and like a storefront, something like that. That's what we consider more commercial. And then when you have industrial, it's more heavy duty activity that is going on the property, right? So, but what makes your property residential or commercial? It's not what really makes it, but planning does have a zoning map that we have to adhere to. So if you have a block and lot, you can look on this map and it will tell you if your property is commercial or is it residential, based on their plan for the island and what they have mapped out. And it's always best to check that, because you do have, for example, you can have certain areas where you see just say along a highway, but it's still not zoned for commercial development just because it's on a highway. You know, you have to look at the area. There's certain other factors that planning, I'm not sure as to how they came up with a development plan as to which areas are residential and commercial, but in determining that with your property, we can help you with that, because we do have access to maps that can help you, and also we can help you in applying to planning for minimal fee, which is the planning fee, for us to be able to tell you what your property is zoned for. Okay, right. So one last thing I want to talk about. If you do have any other questions, let me know. One other thing I want to talk about is in our segment also with Mr. Draxwell Seymour, you know, he did point out different avenues in which land can empower people. And some of the things we discussed was, you know, by building a home, it gives you empowerment, because then you're getting out of the rental business and now you have added assets to you as an individual. You can gain empowerment through creating apartments and commercial complexes, yes. Also, you know, you can use that land to develop things like theme parks, recreational businesses. These are all methods of empowering yourself through land ownership. For sure that we do have, land does not just, does not go away. And because of that, it creates a strong position for you to own land, especially when there is a shortage of available land anywhere. Okay. And one of the things I did point out to show you how much power land ownership has is whenever you have your title, it says a land register and not a house register, because land owns the home and not home own land. So a house can catch a fire and it's gone, but at the end of the day, the land still exists. So that's where the power is, in the ownership of the land, right? Which land is more expensive, commercial or residential land? In most instances, commercial land will be more expensive, because it's like you can get more use out of it, and it bring more income. However, it's still a tricky question, because it all depends on the location of the property. It's always location. And I'll give an example. You may have just say a land going on the highway, half an acre, maybe going at a price of $350,000. Meanwhile, you may go in Grace Bay, and you may have something that is residential at this, and it may be even a little bit smaller, going at $350,000, because it is located in the Grace Bay area, and it's a hot area. So it all depends on the location of the land. You know, that is a big factor in determining the value of it. But in most instances, commercial will carry a higher price than rather than a residential property. All right. One of the questions I'm getting is about expansion. If you have a 4-kitchen apartment, can I extend it without planning approval? Obviously, that is a planning question. But I think if you are, I don't really want to speak to it because I know planning has certain restrictions when you're adding on. If you're not in the original floor plan of what you have submitted already, I know if you're in that floor plan, you can make changes. But when you are doing additions, I feel like you will need planning approval. But something like that, I can double check and always give you an update in the comments section to your question. All right. So I want to, if you, I leave space for two more questions. Meanwhile, I'm just going to talk about one other point that was discussed in the last segment about land ownership, right? One of the things that Mr. Seymour did talk about a lot in his presentation was about, just getting a good savings plan so that you are able to work towards empowering yourself through land ownership, right? Putting away a little savings here and a little savings there, it does go a long way. And some people may not have the on-demand capital, so that's when you, of course, need to go to the bank for assistance. But even in going to the bank for assistance, like we mentioned earlier, they would want to have some trend, some history of deposits into your bank account. So if you are thinking about it, if you're not a person who usually deposits, you just receive your check and you cash it and you spend, just say, your check is obviously going to good use, but try to deposit it first so that the bank can see where these monies are going on your account before you instead of just cashing it, try to deposit it. And so you can have a history, okay? Because this goes a long way in helping you to be able to secure a mortgage with the bank, all right? There are opportunities even in the outer islands where property is less expensive. Even the stamp duty on properties is less expensive than if you are on Provo. So those are opportunities that you can take advantage of if you decide that you would like to purchase a piece of land, if you would like to purchase a land parcel, okay? So it is a lot of information, but I think it's valuable information. And again, like I say, if there are no other questions, we're just gonna wrap this up. But I'm always open to answer any questions that you may have in relation to real estate. Please always send me a message, v.delancey@kw.tc, or send me a message via my Facebook page. Please take the time and go through the shows that we did previously, because I think it was a lot of information that you can use, and all of those persons touch on information that is always asked of us by customers who are looking to purchase. Sometimes you don't think about it because you're not in the process at the time, but once you start that process, then you realize that, hey, I need to understand why I do need an attorney to help me to close this transaction. Hey, I do need to understand now that I'm buying this land, what I can and cannot do in terms of mutations or subdivisions, or in terms of appraisals. How did my realtor come to this conclusion that this is what my property is worth? It's the comparative market analysis, the right approach that they are taking. Obviously it is, because the appraiser can also attest to one of the same methods of of determining value for your property. So again, send me an email. Thank you so much for listening. And I want to say that next week's show, we will have a guest on. We're going to have someone from the Turks and Caicos Real Estate Association. She's going to be sharing about what really the association is about, the advantages, the disadvantages, and also give you an opportunity, again, to ask some of those real estate questions you may have in relation to land ownership in the Turks and Caicos Islands, right? And I also want to put this out there. Again, this show is not really about forcing you as an individual to sell your land. This show is about educating you about the options that you have available, okay? And so that if you you do come in a place where you need to sell or you need to buy, then you know exactly what you need to do to get where you need to get. All right. Thank you so much for listening in. And like I always say, until next week, stay safe and remain blessed. Thank you so much for watching.